Ever since my early adolescence, I've always had a fascination with the weird and unsettling part of the internet, as many of you probably do as well, and definitely some of the websites in particular from that time. I remember as a young kid, I'd browse through Newgrounds, Albino Black Sheep, YouTube, and many other now long gone sites of the early or mid 2000s, just taking in all the creative things that people put together. Being born in 1997, I was given the privilege of growing up alongside the internet and all that meant. I was able to teach myself a lot of things. Some of that stuff I thought was niche at the time, but probably wasn't. But I remember editing things in Toadstool for Super Mario 64 hacks and creating animations using Pivot with stick figures, and I definitely remember watching and playing countless hours of Flash games and animations. Sometimes we go looking for these things in the vast ocean that the internet is, and quickly we realize how little we actually remember about that specific thing. Now, sometimes this is referred to as lost media, depending on the context of the situation, what the media is, but the modern internet allows people to reach out to others who may have a better memory of what the person's trying to find, or just better sleuthing abilities in general. Now, one would think due to how many people use the internet now, and the combined brain power of everybody that's using it, most things that are lost would be found super quickly without any issues, but unfortunately a lot of the times it just isn't the case. The subreddit r/tip of my tongue is one such place where people go to try to find something once remembered, whether that be like an obscure early internet animation or an entire movie that traumatized them as a kid that they saw in passing on their way to bed that they just cannot remember the name of. Today I wanted to go over 3 different posts describing something the OP just can't remember, and the suggestions that some users put forth, both good, helpful, and bad. With the introduction out of the way, let's get into the first one. Kids show. It scared me so bad. What was it? OP opens their post by stating that they are now in their upper 20s and reside in the United States. Like most who find themselves in this situation, they explain that one day they thought of a memory from their childhood that completely scared and disturbed them, but they cannot figure out where the memory came from, no matter how hard they try. They go on to explain that they do remember the show was from a library. I'll read through the story OP provided from their memory. My mom used to take me and my siblings and would allow each of us to pick out a few VHS tapes to watch back at home while she took a nap. This particular time I remember digging through the usual assortment of Disney and Blue's Clues cassettes when I found something that caught my eye. From the cover, it reminded me of Sesame Street, or maybe the Muppets. I thought it would be a good choice and brought it home. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time, though I'm not 100% sure. When I got home and Mom went down for a nap, I popped it in and watched it, and I don't know, maybe it's just one of those weird, not scary things that in retrospect isn't all that bad, but what I remember still makes me question it. Here's what I remember. It was short, like a small series of episodes maybe, and it was, as I said, puppet-like. The main character was a kid, and I think his skin, quote-unquote, color was yellow, or yellowish. Anyway, the kid was sick and was being left home alone. I think a lot about the things in his room were puppets too, but I'm not certain. But what I remember most vividly is that somehow, in some way, his stomach had like a mind of its own and could talk, I think. And at some point his abdomen opened up like a puppet's mouth, but it was all slimy and gooey inside with strings of ick connecting the 2 lips, quote-unquote. I remember being both sickened and morbidly aghast at the display. OP questions again about what they were watching after their description. There's a decent amount of traction with this post, having 67 comments in total. One user suggested the series ALF, which doesn't really fit the description OP provided. Another user linked to a Wikipedia article detailing a children's puppet show from the late 90s to the early 2000s, which would be the correct time frame. OP says that the show looks familiar and that the style looks similar to what they remember, but is unable to find the scene specifically that caused them such distress as a child. A third user suggested Mr. Meaty, which when I was initially reading through the post, I was thinking the same thing. Anyone who watched that show can definitely attest to how grotesque and downright disturbing some of the scenes in that show were. I seriously have no clue what the producers were thinking making that for children. Anyways, many concurred with the user's suggestion of that show, but the OP doesn't think it fits with what they remember about what they watched. There were, of course, many other suggestions by other users within the comments, such as "Don't hug me, I'm scared," which the time frame wouldn't really work with what OP was describing, and the VHS tape, and the fact "Don't hug me, I'm scared" is a YouTube series. There was also Fraggle Rock, a show called Nanoland, a French animation that I won't even try to pronounce the name of. Someone suggested the Goosebumps TV series, among others. One user even provided some insight that someone else may be looking for something of similar description to what OP was trying to remember, but that post dead ends and doesn't have any answers itself. I myself am unsure of what OP might be remembering. Unfortunately, the things that did come to mind were already suggested in OP's post, such as Mr. Meaty, and even "Don't hug me, I'm scared" popped into my head, but of course, like I said before, the time frame doesn't match up. And the small amount of digging that I did do brought me to kind of the same answers that everyone else has suggested already. I do want to say that the talk of grotesque and disturbing puppets did make me think of this old iOS game, Puppet War FPS, where you would literally just shoot puppets that were trying to kill you in a television studio. I'm not even kidding. I mean, it was really fun, but yeah, it was definitely very interesting. I digress. I hope OP has made peace with their memory, or that one day someone will be able to figure out just what they were watching when they were younger. Now, this next post is simply titled "Old Scary Website," in which OP is trying to recall, you guessed it, an old scary website that they used to frequent when they were younger. OP states that they remember a website that they used to visit back in the early 2000s, one that contained a lot of those jump scare, flash games, and animations and some optical illusions. They state they can't remember anything regarding the title or the layout of the website, but they do remember something that was posted on it. There was a video where it had a background of Stonehenge, and there were X's falling and small text about Michael Jackson, and the text was so small you had to look very close, and then you would get jump scared by a vampire. They also go on to describe some of the optical illusions that were posted on the site, one of which being the negative silhouette of Jesus' face, the one you had to stare at and then look at a wall to see him appear. The other illusion they describe is the one with the elephant with the questionable amount of legs. Both of these illusions were definitely super popular, and I remember seeing them specifically all over the place during the mid to late 2000s, most commonly in like YouTube compilations of optical illusions and things like that. Unfortunately, that doesn't help much in our search, but some users did have some suggestions, one of which I think might be what OP was actually looking for. One thing to note is that the post is locked, being that it's over 3 years old, and I still think it's interesting though, and definitely worth mentioning. But one user suggested Albino Black Sheep, which OP responded saying that it wasn't that site. We have another user that suggested Scary for Kids, which OP funnily misinterpreted as the user saying that the content of the site was scary for kids and not adults. But upon clarification, OP confirmed that the site isn't what they remember either. Someone actually did find the Stonehenge video OP was describing in their post and linked to it in the comment. OP confirms that the video was what he remembers seeing, but that the website that was linked to isn't the site that he was trying to recall. Of course, you also get the user saying that they remember what OP was talking about too, but can't provide any help. Thanks for that. Finally, someone suggests this site. Now, OP says that the site didn't work for them, and that's possibly due to the site no longer being functional. But in using the Wayback Machine myself, we're able to actually view what the site used to look like. You indeed have links to those jump scare games and videos that were so popular during the time period, and there's even some mention of various optical illusions. You also have plenty of interesting advertisements on this site as well, as you can see. Was this site what OP was talking about? We might honestly not even find out due to the age of the post and the fact that it's locked. I remember so many of those scary jump scare videos from when I was a kid, the scary maze game, the scary car commercial, the find the odd thing in the room videos. They were all over the place at the time. And being so new, they were a great way to prank your friends and family and have a good laugh. Honestly, now screamers are just kind of so oversaturated, and it's difficult to find enjoyment in them anymore. They're just all over the place and frankly just annoying when you run into them now. But when you do see one, it kind of does take you back a little bit and kind of brings a smile on my face, at least, to a simpler time in the internet, albeit a little bit louder. YouTube video about slideshow of scary ghost pictures, early 2010s. Now, OP gets right to the point by saying they remember watching a video on YouTube that was a slideshow of various famous ghost photos floating around the internet at the time, with some eerie music playing in the background. Just like OP, there was no intro or opening to the video, it just got straight to the point for maximum spooks to the viewer. The video was apparently anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes in length and was decently popular, gaining what OP says was maybe a couple 100,000 views, and for the time period that was insanely popular actually. OP does recall some specifics to the video itself and states the following. I do recall the very first 2 ghost pictures being the infamous Amityville ghost boy quote-unquote photo on the staircase, and the second one being a picture taken of the woods at night with a figure on the right with no head. Couldn't find picture online, sad face. All the pictures had a slow zoom to where the ghost is. The music was very unusual, so unusual that I cannot describe it very well. It's just 2 sets of hums. The closest sound I could compare it to at the moment is the music played during the Mr. Bean at the cinema segment, during which Mr. Bean shook his popcorn to the point where it all spilled out, but it was more toned down with slowly increasing ambience. There were an absolute ton of these types of videos on the internet back in the day, so it may be hard to narrow down anything to what OP is specifically describing, but some users had some input on what they might be remembering. One user, for instance, links to an extremely popular ghost slideshow video with over 1 million views and copyright-stricken music, of course. Unfortunately, OP states that this isn't the video they were remembering, but they do say that a lot of the photos in the linked video were in the video that they were thinking of, putting us in the right time frame. Another user states that they remember the video, but they can't find it, but that they do know that the music used was the Haunted Mansion organ music. Now, I won't be putting that in the video, but you can definitely find it on YouTube. And OP hasn't replied to this comment as of yet, so it still isn't confirmed whether the music is the music they remember, but I will say it does sound somewhat like what OP was describing in his post. Someone else suggested the unnerving images with creepy music playing niche of videos that were so popular a few years ago, but these definitely aren't what OP was talking about and are way too new, and OP even confirms this in a reply. Now, this one was a definite blast to the past for myself. I was super obsessed with ghost hunting videos and pictures and TV shows back when I was younger, and would constantly be on the lookout for the newest way to scare myself into not being able to go to sleep at night. I remember watching these slideshow videos, going on different sites with quote-unquote ghost pictures on them, and watching TV shows like Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures. Of course, looking back now, a lot of the stuff that scared me and what I thought was so real just wasn't. It's almost laughable looking back at what used to scare me as a kid, but I guess that's the point of growing older. A lot of times I think we remember things as way more scary or disturbing than they really were, and these posts can help some people have some closure on some mental anguish that they felt as a kid as a result of some of this lost stuff that they can't remember what it is. So that'll wrap up the r/tip of my tongue post for today. I hope you guys enjoyed going through them with me, and I hope that I got some gears turning for you guys in terms of, remembering things you may or may not have forgotten about. Like I said previously, the internet is such a vast, open space, and we can only begin to imagine the amount of things that are lost or forgotten on here that we just can't remember, but were such a big part of us as we were younger. I made a few posts myself regarding things I needed help hunting down, and while I never got a definitive answer, there were plenty of super nice and super helpful people trying to point me in the right direction. So don't ever be afraid to reach out and make a post like this for help in remembering something for whatever reason, as you honestly never know what might come of it. Much love to all of you, keep it low key, and I can't wait until the next video.